Victoria was only 10 when her world crumbled. Her parents, whom she loved deeply, passed away suddenly, leaving her an orphan. The pain of losing them was overwhelming, and for a child so young, it felt like the weight of the world had fallen on her fragile shoulders. With no siblings and no one else to turn to, she was taken in by her uncle, Thomas, and Auntie Clara, who had been childless for over 6 years. For them, Victoria was more than just their niece. She became the child they had longed for, the light in their otherwise quiet home. Uncle Thomas and Auntie Clara adored Victoria, showering her with love, attention, and care. They gave her the life her parents would have wanted for her: a good home, a top-tier education, and all the opportunities that life had to offer. Victoria blossomed in their care, becoming a bright, beautiful, and kind-hearted young girl. She attended the best schools, wore the finest clothes, and never lacked anything. Though the pain of losing her parents lingered, but the love of her uncle and aunt filled much of that void. The years passed and Victoria grew into a remarkable woman. She was intelligent, driven, and full of dreams, which was a statement to the upbringing her uncle and aunt had provided. On the day of her college graduation, she was filled with joy and anticipation. It was supposed to be one of the happiest days of her life, a moment to make her late parents proud and to honor all the sacrifices her uncle and aunt had made for her. But fate had other plans. While Victoria was preparing for her graduation ceremony, strategy struck once more. Her uncle and aunt, the only family she had left, were involved in a ghastly car accident on their way to celebrate with her. The crash was fatal, and in an instant, Victoria's world was shattered again. The news hit her like a wave, numbing her to the core. It felt as if life had played the cruelest joke on her, taking away the two people who had loved her unconditionally and who had filled the void left by her parents' death. Grief consumed Victoria, but she was no stranger to it. She had lost so much already, and now, with her uncle and aunt gone, she felt truly alone in the world. After the funeral, after the condolences, and after the house grew silent again, Victoria made a difficult decision. She packed her things and left for the city, leaving behind the home filled with too many memories of the people she had loved and lost. In the bustling city, Victoria sought a fresh start. It was a place where no one knew her story, where the weight of her past could be carried silently. She found a small apartment and started building a life for herself, determined to move forward despite the overwhelming loss. Slowly, she began to carve out a new path, but the scars of her past remained, hidden behind a bright smile and strong demeanor. Though the city was fast-paced and full of new opportunities, Victoria often felt a deep sense of isolation. She had lost all the people who had truly cared and loved her. And though she tried to focus on the future, she often thought of the family that had been taken from her. The ache of those memories was a part of her, but they also became her strength. She knew that her uncle and aunt had given her everything they could so she could build a good life, and she intended to honor their memory by doing just that. Victoria's journey was not an easy one, but she was resilient. She worked hard with head high and eventually found a career that she was passionate about. Though she had lost so much, she carried the love and lessons of her family in her heart, and that became her guiding light. She was scrolling through her phone one sunny afternoon where she saw an advert for the post of an executive assistant at Apple Industry. Her eyes lit in excitement as she decided in her mind to apply for the job because she had adorned this great industrial company since she got to the city. On the day of the interview, Victoria James had been waiting for this opportunity for months. The job interview at Apple Industries was supposed to be a big break. The position she had dreamed of ever since she graduated. It was a converted role that would not only elevate her career but also pull her out of the financial struggles she had endured for years. However, everything that could go wrong did. That morning, her alarm didn't go off. Then, on her way to the interview, her bus broke down. By the time Victoria arrived at the towering Alpa Industries building, she was nearly 30 minutes late. Her heart pounded as she refused giving up. She rushed through the lobby, her heels clicking against the marble floor. Sweat beaded on her forehead and her stomach was a knot of anxiety. As she reached for the front door, the receptionist eyed her disapprovingly. "Miss James?" the receptionist asked, aching an eyebrow. "Yes, I am here for the interview with Mr. Parker," Victoria stammered, trying to catch her breath. "You were supposed to be here half an hour ago." The interview panel had already moved on to the next candidate. Her heart sank. "Please, there must be a way to still meet them. I had some unexpected delay, but I've been preparing for this interview for months." The receptionist gave her a pitying look. "I am sorry, but punctuality is the key here. They won't reconsider." Victoria felt her chances slipping away. She stood there in disbelief, her dreams crumbling before her. But as she was about to turn and leave, a voice interrupted. "Is everything all right here?" Victoria looked up to see a tall man with striking features, dressed in a sharp-tailored suit. His presence was commanding, and there was a quiet authority in his voice. The receptionist immediately straightened. "Mr. Harper," she addressed him, her tone deferential. This was it. Edward Harper, CEO of Harper Industries. Ms. James was late for the interview, the receptionist explained. "Unfortunately, we have already moved on to the next candidate." Edward Harper glanced at Victoria, his eyes assessing her quickly. He could see the determination and desperation in her eyes. After a moment of silence, he spoke. "Give her a chance," he said simply. "I believe in second chances." The receptionist blinked in surprise. "Of course, Mr. Harper, right away." Victoria couldn't believe it. The CEO himself had just given her a lifeline. "Thank you," she whispered, her voice thick with gratitude. Edward gave her a brief nod before walking away. Little did Victoria know that this moment was the beginning of something much more profound than a career opportunity. After the interview, Victoria received a call within a week. She had gotten the job. Her dedication and preparedness had impressed the panel, and she was soon working as an executive assistant at Harper Industries. Her boss, Edward Harper, was a demanding yet fair leader. He noticed Victoria's drive and attention to detail, and over time, he began to rely on her for more than just administrative tasks. She became his confidant, someone he trusted implicitly with both work and personal matters. One afternoon, as Victoria was working late in the office, he noticed something off about Edward. He had been unusually quiet all day, his face pale, and there was a strain in his voice she hadn't heard before. "Mr. Harper, are you all right?" she asked, concerned. "I am fine," he replied, brushing off her question. But a few minutes later, as he stood to leave, Edward suddenly collapsed, clutching his chest. Panic surged through Victoria as she rushed to his side. "Mr. Harper!" she shouted, shaking him gently. He was barely conscious, his breathing labored. Without wasting a second, Victoria grabbed her phone and called for an ambulance. She stayed by his side, holding his hand and urging him to stay awake. By the time the paramedics arrived, Edward was sleeping in and out of consciousness. Victoria accompanied him to the hospital, refusing to leave until she knew he was out of danger. Hours later, the doctor informed her that Edward had suffered a severe heart attack If she hadn't intervened, he might not have made it in time. When Edward woke up the next morning, the first person he saw was Victoria, sitting by his bedside, her face etched with worry. Their eyes met, and for the first time, Edward allowed himself to be vulnerable in front of her. "You saved my life," he whispered, his voice weak. "I am just glad I was there," Victoria replied softly. From that moment on, their relationship began to change. Edward, who had always kept people at arm's length, found himself drawn to Victoria in ways he hadn't expected. He admired her strength, her compassion, and her loyalty. She wasn't just another employee, she had become someone he cared about deeply. As Edward recovered, he and Victoria grew stronger. They spent more time together outside of work. Dinners, late-night conversations, and long walks where they talked about their hopes, their past, and the things that mattered most to them. Soon, the unspoken feelings between them blossomed into love. But there was one complication. Amanda was Edward's longtime girlfriend. Though their relationship had been on the rocks for months, they barely spoke, and when they did, it was strained. Amanda had been more interested in Edward's wealth and status than in him as a person, and he had grown tired of the superficial connection they shared. When Edward told Amanda about his growing feelings for Victoria, she was furious. She had always been possessive of Edward, not because she loved him, but because she loved what he represented. His wealth, power, and influence were the things she wasn't willing to let go of easily. Despite Amanda's objection, Edward went ahead to introduce Victoria to his mom. And his mom was so excited and fell in love with Victoria on their first meeting. She ordered her maid to prepare them something delicious to eat, and the rest of the evening went well with lots of chit-chat of Victoria's sad story. Edward and Victoria's love grew stronger as they were madly in love with each other. However, they decided to move forward with their relationship. A few months later, Edward proposed to Victoria and she accepted with joy. Their relationship continued to blossom in the months leading up to their dream wedding. Every detail was planned, every moment anticipated with excitement. Edward couldn't wait to make Victoria his wife, and she felt the same, ready to spend her life with a man who loved her so deeply. The day of their wedding was finally upon them. Friends and family gathered, the sun shining brightly over the beautifully decorated venue. It was supposed to be perfect. But amidst the joy and excitement, Amanda, Edward's ex-girlfriend, made an unexpected appearance. No one had seen or heard from her in months. Yet, here she was, lurking in the shadows. Consumed with jealousy and unable to bear seeing Edward move on, Amanda had just devised a sinister plan. Just hours before the ceremony, she kidnapped Victoria. Amanda took Victoria to an old abandoned warehouse on the outskirts of town. The once thriving building was now crumbling and rusted, its dark corners filled with the smell of decay. There she tied Victoria to a rusty chair, leaving her to die. The moments that followed were terrifying. Victoria was confused, scared, and utterly helpless. Meanwhile, Edward was in panic. When Victoria didn't show up for the wedding, everyone knew something was wrong. His heart broke. The woman he loved was missing, and no one knew where to start. He alerted the police, plastered her picture all over the news, and pleaded for anyone with information to come forward. But days passed with no sign of her. Edward was devastated, unable to walk, eat, or sleep. His heart ached as he prayed for her safe return. In a stroke of fate, a good Samaritan who had been walking near the warehouse heard muffled cries coming from inside. Investigation further. He found Victoria tied up and weak, but alive. He rescued her and took her to his home, where he nursed her back to health. Victoria, though shaken and traumatized, was grateful beyond words. She spent the next few months recovering in secret, afraid that Amanda will still be out there. During this time, Edward's life had spiraled into despair. He had done everything in his power to find Victoria, but every lead turned cold. Amanda, however, reappeared in Edward's life, pretending to be reformed and caring. She offered him comfort, pretending to help him through his grief. Edward's mother, believing Victoria might never return, urged him to move on and give Amanda another chance. But Edward's heart belonged to Victoria, and despite the pressure, he refused to accept Amanda back into his life. What no one knew was that during her captivity, Victoria had been pregnant with Edward's child. As she recovered, she clung to the hope of reuniting with him, knowing that their love and the life growing inside her would guide her back. One day, after months of waiting, Victoria returned. The moment Edward saw her at his doorstep, tears filled his eyes. It was as if this world, which had crumbled in her absence, was suddenly rebuilt. He ran to her, pulling her into his arms, overwhelmed with joy and disbelief. Victoria exposed Amanda's evil plan, recounting her horrifying ordeal. The authorities were immediately called and Amanda was arrested, her cruel actions coming to light at last. With Amanda out of their lives for good, Edward and Victoria were finally able to celebrate the wedding they had always dreamed of. This time, it was more spectacular than before, a true testament to the strength of their love. Surrounded by friends and family and happiness, they exchanged vows and promised to never be apart again. A few months later, Victoria gave birth to beautiful twins, a boy and a girl. The family was complete and their love life, though marked by hardship, ended in joy. Edward and Victoria raised their children in a home filled with love and laughter, grateful for the second chance they had been given. And so they lived happily ever after, their love stronger than ever, their family whole. The end. Hey beautiful people, thanks for watching. Please do subscribe to my YouTube channel and turn on the bell notification so you'll be the first to see a video whenever I post it. Thank you very much and God bless you. I love you.